Hey there, and welcome to this deep dive. Today we're jumping into something pretty significant happening in the UK.
Yeah, it's about immigration policy, specifically how people get to settle here long term.
Exactly. We're looking at an analysis from the Westferry Times that really breaks down a, well, potentially huge shift.
That's right. The main thing they're flagging is this big extension in how long people might have to live here lawfully before they can, apply for permanent residency.
It sounds like it could genuinely affect a lot of people's lives and
Oh,
plans.
definitely. Potentially millions, according to the analysis.
Okay, let's unpack that. Indefinite leave to remain ILR. That's the key thing here, right? Based on the Westferry Times piece, what is ILR, essentially?
Well, what the analysis explains is ILR gives someone the right to live and work in the UK without any time restrictions. It's, the stable status everyone's aiming for, settled status,
Really?
basically.
The key to long-term stability. And the way people got this, the path, it used to look one way, but this new proposal, it's
Okay.
quite different.
Yeah, historically, as the Westferry Times points out, the common route was often hitting 5 years of um, continuous lawful residence. Then you could apply.
5 years. Okay. And the new proposal they're highlighting.
It extends that significantly for, well, a lot of migrant categories. That minimum time is potentially jumping to 10 years.
10 years. Wow, that's double the time for, as you say, a lot of people.
Yeah.
Does the analysis say if everyone faces this, are there exceptions mentioned in the source?
Yes, they're quite clear on that. The analysis explicitly states that people on family visas or dependents whose visas are linked to someone else's, they're specifically excluded from this 10-year extension.
Okay, so not universal, but still impacting a huge group.
Exactly. Their paths might follow different rules.
So for a large chunk of migrants already here or thinking of coming, the timeline to really putting down roots could stretch out dramatically.
That seems to be the core proposal being discussed.
Okay, so our mission then for this deep dive is to really get into the details from this Westferry Times analysis, understand the implications they're pointing out, and explore the kind of reactions and consequences they discuss.
And what's really interesting, and the analysis connects this, is that it's not happening in a vacuum.
Right.
It's being framed as part of wider government reforms aimed specifically at cutting overall net migration numbers.
Ah, okay, so it's part of that bigger picture strategy.
Right.
Diving into the specifics then, this shift from 5 to 10 years, who exactly does the analysis say gets caught up in this? Which visa types?
The Westferry Times identifies most of the common ones, really. It includes skilled workers. It's a massive group, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and also refugees and people holding those Hong Kong B&O visas, the British national overseas status.
So quite a wide range. And the potential impact, the scale of it, especially on people already here, the numbers cited sound pretty big.
They're significant, yeah. Their estimate is that it could affect somewhere around 1.5 million migrants who've arrived since 2020.
1.5 million since 2020. Wow.
And here's the bit that the analysis really emphasizes as disruptive.
Go on.
It suggests the policy might apply retroactively.
Retroactively. So people who came thinking it was a 5-year path.
Exactly. They could suddenly find that path has doubled, like halfway through their journey towards settling.
That just throws a huge spanner in the works, doesn't it? Creates massive uncertainty.
Totally disruptive. And you mentioned legally complex earlier, and retroactive changes often are.
Yeah, absolutely. Does the Westferry Times piece mention any, potential ways around this, any carve-outs or maybe faster tracks within this new 10-year system?
They do touch on that, yeah. The analysis notes there might be expedited routes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for people in high-demand sectors, they use the NHS as an example,
Okay.
or perhaps for those meeting certain high-income levels. But, and this is crucial, they stress the detailed criteria for these possible exceptions, still under consultation.
Ah, so the details aren't locked in yet. Lots of unknowns.
Precisely. The exact pathways aren't fully defined.
Which brings us right to the human side of this. The Westferry Times article includes voices of people actually facing this uncertainty. Can you share an example they used?
Yeah, absolutely. To kind of illustrate the personal impact, the analysis mentions Alexander Krakey. He's a U.S. national working in finance here.
Okay.
And he apparently expressed, real frustration, dismay even, about how sudden the shift feels and how it basically upends his long-term plans and sort of commitment to staying in the UK.
You can totally understand that reaction, feeling like the goalposts have just been shifted mid-game.
Definitely.
And beyond individual stories like that, the analysis also raises bigger questions, doesn't it, about the UK's ability to integrate and keep skilled people here. What were their points on that?
Well, the analysis suggests that putting people on this much longer, more uncertain path, it could actually deter skilled professionals from really committing long term.
Makes sense.
Building careers lives here. And they argue this could potentially hurt sectors that really rely on international talent. It raises this critical question, as the Westferry Times puts it, about how the country integrates long-term residents if their status is kind of up in the air for a whole decade.
Yeah, that integration point feels really important. It's not just about individual plans, it touches the economy, society.
Exactly.
So let's look at the legal and social angles the analysis explored. What potential legal issues did the Westferry Times flag?
Well, the big one they flagged is that retroactive application. They suggest that's likely to face legal scrutiny if it goes ahead.
Right.
And they also mention other potentially stricter criteria being talked about, like tougher English language requirements. Those could also face legal challenges.
Okay. And socially, what were the concerns raised about having people wait 10 years for settled status?
A key worry highlighted in the analysis is that it could really strain community ties, make proper integration harder. Well, the argument is, if your long-term right to actually stay here is uncertain for such a long time, it's harder to, properly put down roots, build deep connections in your community, feel truly settled and part of things.
That makes a lot of sense. It's hard to feel settled when your status literally isn't.
Okay, as we sort of wrap up this deep dive into the Westferry Times analysis, what was their final take? Any advice for migrants who might be affected?
Yeah, their main concluding advice is really for migrants in the UK to stay vigilant, stay informed about how these policies actually develop.
Right, keep track of it.
Exactly. And crucially, they recommend getting professional legal advice that's specific to your own situation. Because as they reiterate, the policy is still under consultation.
So things could still change.
Things could definitely still evolve, yeah.
Okay, so let's quickly recap what we've pulled from this analysis. The main finding is this potential huge shift from often a 5-year path to settlement, ILR, for many migrants, to a proposed 10-year wait. And the Westferry Times analysis connects this to broader government aims on reducing net migration. And it underlines that massive potential impact.
Yeah.
Maybe 1.5 million people arriving since 2020 affected.
Especially because of that possibility of it being applied retroactively, causing all that uncertainty we talked about.
Yeah. And we also got into the human side and the wider implications they highlighted.
Yeah.
The frustration, like Alexander Crakey's story showed, concerns about deterring skilled talent, impacting key sectors.
Like, there's big questions about integration and retention when settlement takes so much longer.
And finally, the legal and social points the analysis raised.
Right, the potential legal challenges, especially on retroactivity and other stricter rules, plus that social concern that longer waits could hinder integration, maybe strain community ties.
And of course, the vital point that it's still under consultation, and the advice to stay informed and seek legal help.
Definitely. Okay, so thinking about all this, here's maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over based on what we've discussed from the source.
How might actually experiencing this much longer, much more uncertain journey to settlement, how might that fundamentally shape the choices, the feelings of people who are building lives here, contributing their skills?
And maybe what does that mean for the UK's long-term relationship with its international residents?
Yeah, a lot to think about there.
Definitely a lot to ponder as these policies continue to develop. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the Westferry Times analysis on these proposed changes. We'll certainly keep an eye on this story.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.